First of all, we only do this on behalf of families. So we only take on a case if a family reaches out and asks us, because that's where our mandate comes from.
Back in the good old days, we would do about 6 or 7 of them at a given time. Then in the last 5 years, this skyrocketed. We have several cases that we're dealing with in Russia. We're dealing with a case in Iraq. We're dealing in cases in Afghanistan, Pakistan. There's quite a few of them. Then October 7th happened. And only on Gaza we were at 67 families that we were directly working with. Now that number in Gaza has went down because some of them came over, some of them unfortunately died.
I define it almost as the area that goes beyond what the mandate is and authority of governments in international relations. When the US government engages in with a government like Russia or Venezuela or indirectly with Iran, as soon as the American and the Russians get into a room to discuss, even if they plan on discussing a prisoner issue, immediately the issue of Ukraine comes into play, nuclear stability, world order, and they cannot insulate the issue of the prisoners. So they can't refine what the solution would look like. When we come in, we only have a mandate to do that. They can talk to us about policy, but we have no authority on policy. So we can listen, that's not going to impact anything, but we're able to completely focus on the issue of humanitarian and prisoners issues.
Those deals are never pretty. They're never good, because essentially you're exchanging an innocent person for a guilty person. So it doesn't feel just. But sometimes it's the only way to bring an innocent American back home.
And in most cases, I don't go to these places and to these leaders and say, oh, you have the wrong person, that might feel good to accuse them, but it won't get me the person back. If I come back to the US and I'm explaining how the North Koreans are viewing the world, it doesn't mean that I justify what they do, but it means that I'm trying to explain what it is that they're seeing. A resolved case that was one of the most devastating ones for me was 웜비어의 in North Korea. I traveled there. That was without Governor Richardson. I was leading that mission because the North Koreans didn't want Governor Richardson at that point in it. And I really thought I'm going to be able to bring him home. And then when he eventually came home, and we found out only when he was airlifted that he was in a coma. So the whole 18 months of me negotiating, I didn't know that he was in that condition. Later on, I've learned that my counterparts in North Korea also didn't know, up to the level of the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I went to Ohio to meet them when he came back, while he was still alive. All I could do, I was in the room with him, and I was with Cindy over there, and all I could do is cry and tell her, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And she gave me a hug, and she said, look, it's because of your efforts that I got to hug my boy when he was still warm. And it took me back to losses that I've had on a personal level before.
When you just start to take in on a case, the captors don't want you involved because they have something they want from the US government, not from you. And the US government doesn't want you involved because you're going to muck up their strategy. But I don't represent any of them, I represent the family.